vZoom contains various network elements like nodes, links, and zones. Each network element in vZoom is a distinct object with its own predefined and user-defined attributes, and also data associated with it. We'll be learning about the fundamental elements most commonly used in vZoom. Nodes represent intersections on a roadway. A user may specify various attribute values for a node. The most important attribute values are the intersection control type, type number, which is used for application of node volume delay functions, name, and capacity. In order to create a node, click on the plus icon, select Nodes in the Network toolbar, and click at a point in the Network display area. You are able to initially define attributes in this display. In order to edit a node, double-click the arrow or Edit Mode icon. This will call the Junction Editor window, which has 5 elements: node, links, turns, geometry, and signal timing. Clicking on any of these windows will bring up an editor that allows the user to make edits to either of these elements. Within the Junction Editor, the Attribute Selection icon may be used to turn on or turn off certain attributes that are displayed in the element or object properties. Alternatively, node attribute values may be entered by single-clicking a node in the map and entering a value in the Quick View window dialog. Attributes displayed in the Quick View window may be selected by clicking the Attribute Selection icon. Links represent either roadway sections in case of private transportation, or streetcars, buses, and rail in case of public transportation. The key attributes in this network object include the type number, used to identify functional classification. For example, some generally used classifications include freeways, arterials, and collectors, like the node link type, is necessary for the application of appropriate volume delay functions. The other key attributes for links include capacity, speed, number of lanes, and transport systems, often referred to in vZoom as TSYS. A link may be created by selecting the Create mode and then clicking the 2 nodes between which a link is to be created. Once a link is created, an edit window pops up, prompting the user to enter certain basic attribute values for a link. In order to edit a link, the user may double-click the required link and enter the attribute values in text boxes as indicated. The Quick View window may also be used in order to enter attribute values for a link. The Turns object represent turning movements at intersections. Typical applications of the Turns attribute are used in order to assign penalties and restrictions to certain turn movements. For example, left turns may be penalized with a travel time and capacity constraint in order to make such movements less attractive to traffic. In order to edit turns, a user may double-click a node and enter attribute values in the Turn window of the node editor. A turn may also be edited in the Quick View window by first clicking the From node, then Via node, and then the To node, and entering the required attribute value in the Quick View window. A turn cannot be created or added since it is automatically created when links and nodes are connected. Zones, often referred to as transportation analysis zones, represent the origin and destination geography for trip ends in the model domain. The OD, or demand data, is linked with the zone. Also, user-definable attribute information for activities such as the land use data used for trip generation is stored in a zone network object. Zones may be created using the network editor or imported from shapefiles. In this section, we will only cover creation of zones with network editor. Import of zones from shapefiles will be covered in another section. To create a zone, click on Zones in the Network Editor toolbar, then click the plus or Create icon. Now click in the network window where the zone is to be placed. In public transport, basic data related to the zone in the dialog, and click OK. Now create a zone boundary for this zone by left-clicking multiple times on the network window. Remember, the direction of the arrow depicts the area enclosed. As a result, the centroid of the zone should ideally be in the middle of the boundaries, with arrows pointing towards one another. Once all of the shape points for the zone boundary have been created, right-click to complete the polygon. Click OK on the Edit Shape dialog. In order to edit a zone, double-click the desired zone and enter values into attributes as required. Also, the Quick View window may be used to enter values in a zone. If a new boundary needs to be defined for a particular zone, click the zone, right-click and select Edit Shape from the menu. The existing shape points may be moved or new added by holding the Control key down and clicking on the boundary. If a completely new shape is to be defined, then initialize the old shape and redraw the new zone boundary similar to how it was created when a new zone was created. Before we move on, let's view the Connectors tab in the Edit Zone dialog. This allows us to establish the method for ingress and egress to any zone by a zone connector. Connectors are used to define loading points for trips originating from a zone onto the physical road network, as well as the egress from the network to a zone centroid. Also, connectors are used to define the zone disaggregation when applying multi-point assignment. A connector connects a zone centroid to a node in the network. This node is connected to a link. This way, a trip starting at a zone can be placed on a road network. In order to create a connector, first make sure that the network contains links, nodes, and zones. Then click the Connectors tab in the Network Editing toolbar. Click Plus. Now, left-click a zone centroid. This will mark the origin of the connector. Next, left-click a node in the vicinity. This will bring up a dialog box. Enter the initial attribute values for the connector in the Basis and Transport Systems tab. Clicking opposite will bring up the properties of the connector in the opposite direction. If a user wishes to allow a particular thesis on a connector, checking and unchecking permissible will allow or disallow a certain thesis from using a connector. A connector may be opened in only one direction or both directions. A one-way connector may be needed in order to model exit or entry-only access points to the zone. A connector may be edited by double-clicking over it in single select mode. If multiple connectors exist, then double-clicking the zone centroid will bring up a dialog with the option of navigation through each connector. In general, to edit any network element in vZoom, a user must first select the network element that is to be edited. This is done by clicking the network element icon and clicking a selection mode: single select, spatial select. Once the required network element has been selected, it can be double-clicked on the graphical network display or map. Double-clicking will bring up a dialog box that lets the user enter values for a given network attribute example, speed or capacity for a link. vZoom is a multimodal transport planning software package. In vZoom, we may be implementing either private transportation or public transportation systems. Private transport will typically be comprised of modes and transport systems such as single-occupant vehicles, high-occupancy vehicles, commercial vehicles, and bicycles. As a result, most network objects in vZoom have two sets of attributes. One is for private and one for public. In order to take a closer look at this aspect of modeling in vZoom, in Single Select Edit mode, double-click a link. In the dialog box, click through the tabs for Private Transport Systems and Public Transport Systems. Note that the Capacity attribute is available only for private transport systems. This means that capacity constraints exist only for demand segments and modes using this transport system. Having public and private also enables the user to assign different speeds to the same network links. This is especially important in modeling public transport systems, such as bus rapid transit, where the bus may have a higher speed than cars running on the same road, or for usual bus service, where bus speed may be capped at a lower value compared to that of cars. In order to assign special speeds for public transport, click Demand, then one more for TSYS, Modes, DSEGs. In the Transport Systems tab, click Create, type a code and name for the new transport system, then in Type, click the drop-down and select Public Transport. Now type a value for speed in V Public Transport and select the links type to associate with this public transport speed. All links of this type will have a speed for the new transport system as per this definition. The key elements connecting supply and demand in VZoom are TSYS, modes, and demand segments. Here's a definition of these elements. A transport system is defined by private transport or public transport or auxiliary public transport system, such as WAC. A transport system is not to be confused with mode, which has an additional element in VZoom. A mode connects one or several transport systems. A mode can include either one private transport system or several public transport systems. Thus, a transport system is a subset of a mode. An example of this would be light rail and commuter rail being different transport systems since they operate on different network or guideways, but overall may be classified as a single mode called rail. A demand segment belongs to exactly one mode. This way, a demand segment is the link between transport supply and transport demand. As several demand segments can be defined for each mode, different types of demand can be combined in the transport mode. A demand segment may represent a market segment. Market segments, most commonly represented by VZoom, may be home-based work, which most people refer to as commute trips, home-based other, and non-home-based trips. Let us perform an exercise to define the elements we just discussed. First, we create a transport system. To do this, click Demand, then TSYS, Modes, DSEGs. Click the TSYS tab and click Create. Type in a code, for example, SOV, and give it a name, say SOV-car. Select a type, private transport in this case, since the transport system car is a private transport system. Enter a value for passenger car units, then define a maximum speed. Click OK. A dialog with the option of automatic creation of modes and demand segments will appear. Uncheck this option and click OK. Now we will establish a mode. To do this, click the Modes tab in the TSYS Modes DSEGs menu. Click Create, enter a code, and a name for the mode. Say SOV and SOV-car. Select Type from the drop-down, in this case private transport. Then, select the transport system to include in this mode from the Transport System list box. Click OK. Last, we create a demand segment. Click the Demand Segment tab in the TSYS Modes DSEGs menu. Click Create. Enter a code and name, such as SOV-work. Select a mode in the Mode drop-down. Next, enter an occupancy, in this case, 1. If it were a high occupancy vehicle, we would enter something like 2 as occupancy. Occupancy helps in keeping track of vehicle trips and person trips separately. Projection factors may be used in order to scale attribute values linearly to a projected horizon year value. Click OK. Click through the tabs TSYS Modes DSEGs again to examine the newly created transport system, modes, and demand segments. Click OK. types allow a user to specify and define link characteristics according to a roadway classification. Link types can be used in order to define characteristics typical of certain road classifications, such as speed, capacity, and transportation systems allowed. Once these are defined, VZoom automatically allocates these attributes to all newly created links based on the characteristics defined for a certain link type. Link types are also used by VZoom to associate volume delay functions with links. To create link types, click Network, then choose Link Types. This dialog allows you to select the type to edit in the upper left, and the rest of the dialog is used for populating the attributes of that specific link type. You may also assign characteristics to a global link type, which is useful if you want to have common attributes for several link types without typing information repeatedly. Alternatively, you may define link types by clicking Lists and then select Link Types. Then simply type in the required characteristics for a certain link type. To create a link type 1 as a freeway, type in freeway in the name column for link type number 1. Then type in the transport system allowed on this type of link, typically car and bus. Enter a capacity to be associated with this link type and a speed for this link type. This completes the definition of a link type. There are a maximum of 100 link types in VZoom. These are numbered from 0 to 99. In order to allocate a link type to a link in the network, double-click the link and select a link type to allocate from the Type drop-down menu and click OK. Allocation of link types to volume delay functions will be discussed in a later section that discusses private transport traffic assignment.